Most coaches use genetics to explain why their athletes aren't getting faster. And they're not wrong. Genetics do matter. But if genetics are your explanation, you've already stopped coaching and your athletes are paying for it in every single session. Here's the question every coach has asked at some point. Are some athletes just born faster? And the honest answer is yes. Genetics do play a role. Fibre type, limb length, neurological efficiency, these things matter. And pretending they don't helps nobody. But here's what most coaches get wrong. They use genetics as the full explanation. That athlete is fast because they're built for it. This one isn't fast because they're not. And once that belief takes hold, the whole coaching stops. So why develop something that's already been decided? Take a look at this box here. This is your athlete's speed potential. This bar represents everything they could be. Now, here's where most athletes are. Okay? Halfway, maybe less. This top half here is completely untapped, completely undeveloped, completely available. It is just sitting there waiting for the right process to unlocking it, because most coaches spin the same wheel of strength and power training and hoping and guessing what's going to generate speed to unlock this potential, because genetics aren't the reason your athletes aren't faster. They're the reason your athletes can be faster. Every single athlete you work with has the potential. They just haven't touched it yet. And the only thing standing between where they are and where they could be is a plan that actually targets that. So genetics do set the ceiling. Most athletes are nowhere near it, which raises the real question. If it's not genetics holding them back, then what is it? So if genetics aren't the limiting factor, the next place coaches look at is something known as training age. This athlete has been in the gym for 5 years, they've done all the work, they should be fast by now. And this is where one of the most common mistakes in speed development actually hides, because training age and speed age are not the same thing. So let me show you what I mean. Simply put, we've got two columns here. In this side, we've got our typical training age, where we've got learn to train, training to train, training to win, compete, and training to win. And inside this, we have all the basic gym work. We've got 5-6 years of fitness work, conditioning, team training. So we've got all of the fundamental components of fitness, which we typically talk about in the hope that we try and get speed as a byproduct, which we've covered in the previous video. But now this column here, speed age, has to understand one of the key constructs which take our athlete through our training age paradigm, which is this: have they actually spent specific time dedicated to develop speed qualities and sprint work? I'm talking structured exposures, deliberate sprint practice. And for most athletes, this column is almost empty. For example, for an athlete to get out of learning to train to training to train is 2 years, okay? And you would know this. Think about when you first started going to the gym. You'd be lifting weights 3 to 4 times a week, and over a 2-year period, your body would completely transform, because you're tapping into this fundamental physical genetic ability that hadn't been tapped, all the while neglecting the specificity and the consistency required to develop sprint qualities. So therefore, someone could be training for 5 years and have 5 years of structured training, but not 1 year of deliberate speed work. And that is the key mistake many coaches make, because they've not touched their speed age at all. And this is the thing coaches miss. An athlete can have a high training age but a very low speed age. They've been building general qualities for a long period of time, and nobody has ever sat down and deliberately built their speed. So when coaches wonder why their experienced athletes aren't faster, this is usually the answer. They've been training hard, but they've been doing all the wrong things. I actually had an experience of this working in professional rugby with a 35-year-old ex-Welsh international and Premiership rugby player who's 35, and we achieved lifetime sprint bests in 10 meters, 20 meters and top speed within 6 months. And he was 35 years old. What he had is an incredibly high training age of over 20 plus years, but he hadn't developed a single level of speed age. We changed the training, we had opened the door to his true genetic profile, this untapped area, and the results came very, very fast. So the fix actually isn't more training, it's restructuring what the training is actually used for. Audit how much time is generally going into sprint development each week, and then start shifting the balance towards it. Training age will tell you how long an athlete's been working, but speed age will tell you how much of their work has actually transferred to speed. And for most athletes, that number is much lower than anyone realized. So now we know that training age isn't the same as speed age. The next question is this: what does proper sprint exposure look like? And this is where most coaches hit a wall, because when they hear sprint exposure, they just think sprinting. They get the athletes on the track, they run some reps, job done, and that's only part of it. Real sprint exposure is a system that's underpinned by sprint development. It has structure, it has hierarchy, it has every component inside it that has a specific role to play. So let me draw this out for you as well. We have a hierarchy, and at the base of the hierarchy, the gym, but not general strength work, not fitness, not conditioning. The gym that actually builds specific sprint qualities that support speed. So for example, that is, as we talked about in the previous video, developing relative strength. And later in the series, we're going to look at specific strength for the development of speed. And then above this, we're actually going to start to look at specific sprint variations. So speed drills, okay? Variants of sprinting, the structured sprint work, okay? And then each is going to be replaced and placed in a specific order to help develop the quality, because we have a bottom-up approach, because we are monitoring speed and the development of the types of speed we're trying to develop, and everything from the top, the bottom up is supporting that. And that's really vital with the preparation for team sport athletes and all athletes alone, because the outputs underneath are designed to produce that. And if they're not designed to produce that, then they're a waste of time. So every level of this hierarchy feeds the one above it. Take one out, and this is the big thing, the whole thing becomes less effective. It's like pushing dominoes over. If you take a domino out, the tower doesn't fall anymore. Coaches who skip the gym work wonder why their athletes lack the physical foundation to sprint well, because gym work is very important for the development of speed. Coaches who skip the structured field work wonder why gym strength never transfers to the track. It's because the exposure isn't just sprinting, it's everything that makes sprinting possible, organized in the right order. So stop building general qualities and start building towards speed. Every session, gym or field, should have a clear role in this hierarchy and a clear reason why it is there. Because even with the right exposure, there's still one more reason an athlete can plateau. It comes down to how fast you ask them to move before they're ready. So we've looked at genetics, training age, sprint exposure, and now the final piece, and honestly the most consistently overlooked, is movement competency. How well can your athletes actually execute the movements that make them faster? And the answer for most team sport athletes is not as well as you think, because they've never been given the environment to actually develop them. Here's what happens in most speed sessions. The athletes line up, the coach blows a whistle, everyone goes flat out, and it looks like speed work. But what's really happening? The athletes who are already fast stay fast. The athletes who aren't just repeat their existing patterns and just at maximum effort. Nobody is actually developing anything new. They're just expressing what they already had as fast as they can. Here's why. Look at this graph. Speed of movement is going to be going on this axis, and retention of the skill is going to go on this axis. As you see, as speed of movement goes up, retention will decline. Okay? Because if we ask an athlete to move fast, the less that they can actually process, feel and learn from what they're doing. Which means if you only ever train at maximum speed, you're only ever getting maximum expression and you're never getting maximum development. So when we look at the process of integrating skill and learning skills, we initially have what's known as a cognitive bias, and that cognitive bias will give us an impulse of learning. So the brain is learning and understanding it, but over time, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we have complete rates of forgetting. So if that's session 1, session 2, its job is to actually re-support that learning to mitigate the rates of forgetting as we come off. And this is how we start to develop it. And that is why the whole method is so underused in speed coaching. Athlete needs time at lower speeds to actually learn the movement, feel the positions and build the skill before they're asked to perform it at full pace. You would do that when learning any other skill, so why is speed any different? That's why I created the Learn, Load and Execute framework. Learn the movement at the speed where skill retention is the most highest. Load it with either complexity or resistance to build the competency. Then execute it at full speed once the skill is actually there. Stop asking athletes to go fast before they're ready. Give them the process to develop the movement first and the speed will follow. So let's bring this all together. Why are some athletes faster than others? Genetics do play a role, absolutely. But for most athletes, genetics are the smallest part of the story. The real reasons are a low speed age hiding behind a high training age, sprint exposure is never properly structured, and movement that's never been developed at the right speed to actually stick. And here's what that means for you as a coach. The gap between where your athletes are and where they could be isn't fixed. It isn't decided. It's incredibly coachable. Every athlete you work with has untapped potential sitting in that top half of the bar, right where it was there. And the right process unlocks it. But here's the thing. If every athlete has the potential to get faster, the next question becomes, should every athlete be trained the same way? Because the answer to that changes everything about how you structure your sessions, select your exercises, and sequence your progression. And that is exactly where we're going to look in the next video, because not every athlete should sprint the same way. And once you understand why, you'll never program a speed session the same way again. Watch the next video.